Operation Paperclip, Innovation in the Shadow of Morality. Operation Paperclip remains one of the most controversial and consequential intelligence programs in American history. Initiated in the chaotic aftermath of World War II, this secret endeavor brought over 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians to the United States. While the program successfully accelerated American advancements in rocketry, medicine, and aviation, it also created a profound ethical paradox. The U.S. government, which had just fought a war to defeat Nazism, was now actively recruiting men who had served the Third Reich. This video explores the strategic motivations, moral compromises, and enduring legacy of Operation Paperclip. The origins of Operation Paperclip lie in the rapidly cooling relationship between the Allied powers as World War II drew to a close. As Soviet and American troops raced toward Berlin, military strategists realized that the next major conflict would likely be between the US and the USSR. Germany possessed advanced military technology, particularly the V-2 rocket, jet aircraft, and chemical weapons, which both superpowers coveted. The U.S. Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency, JIOA, was tasked with securing this intellectual capital before the Soviets could claim it, framing the operation as a matter of national survival. Originally dubbed Operation Overcast, the program initially aimed to interview German scientists and utilize their expertise temporarily. However, the scope quickly expanded as the Cold War began to crystallize. American officials realized that brief interrogations were insufficient to transfer the depth of German technical knowledge. Consequently, the program was renamed Operation Paperclip, a reference to the paperclips attached to the personnel files of scientists selected for transfer to the United States. This bureaucratic label masked the profound shift in policy: the permanent immigration of former enemy nationals. The most famous figure recruited under Operation Paperclip was Wernher von Braun, the technical director of the Peenemünde Army Research Center. Von Braun was the mastermind behind the V-2 rocket, the world's first long-range guided ballistic missile. While his genius was undeniable, his background was deeply problematic. He was a member of the SS, and his rockets were built using slave labor from the Mittelbau-Dora concentration camp. Bringing him to the U.S. required a deliberate overlooking of these facts, a pattern that would be repeated for many other recruits. President Harry S. Truman formally approved the operation in 1946, but included a critical stipulation: no active Nazi supporters or militarists were to be recruited. This order presented a significant obstacle for the JIOA, as many of the top scientists had deep ties to the Nazi Party. To circumvent the president's directive, military intelligence officers sanitized the dossiers of key scientists. Incriminating evidence of war crimes or enthusiastic Nazi affiliation was expunged or downplayed, creating a false narrative that these men were merely apolitical scientists caught up in the machinery of war. The ethical compromises of Operation Paperclip extended beyond rocketry. The program also recruited specialists in chemical and biological warfare, including Kurt Blome, a high-ranking Nazi scientist who had tested plague vaccines on concentration camp prisoners. The U.S. Army Chemical Corps justified his recruitment by citing the need to understand potential Soviet biological capabilities. This willingness to collaborate with individuals implicated in heinous medical experiments highlighted the extent to which Cold War pragmatism superseded moral considerations. Another area of interest was aviation medicine. German doctors had conducted brutal high-altitude and freezing experiments on prisoners at Dachau to determine survivability for Luftwaffe pilots. Under Operation Paperclip, several of the researchers involved in these atrocities were brought to the U.S. to work for the Air Force. Hubertus Struggold, later known as the father of space medicine, was a central figure in this group. For decades, his role in the Nazi medical establishment was obscured, allowing him to receive high honors from the American government. Despite the dark origins of its personnel, Operation Paperclip yielded undeniable technological successes. The German rocket team, led by von Braun, formed the backbone of the U.S. Army's ballistic missile program. They developed the Redstone rocket, which launched the first American into space. Later transferred to NASA, this team was instrumental in designing the Saturn V launch vehicle, the technological marvel that carried the Apollo 11 astronauts to the Moon. Without their expertise, the US arguably would have lost the space race to the Soviet Union. In addition to space exploration, paperclip scientists contributed significantly to the development of jet aircraft. Their research on swept-wing designs, which the Germans had pioneered with the Messerschmitt Me-262, heavily influenced the design of the F-86 Sabre and subsequent American fighter jets. This transfer of aerodynamic knowledge allowed the U.S. Air Force to achieve air superiority during the Korean War and maintained American dominance in military aviation for decades. The program also advanced American capabilities in guided missiles and cruise missile technology. German engineers who had worked on the V-1 buzz bomb brought their experience to the U.S. Navy and Air Force, accelerating the development of early American cruise missiles like the MGM-1 Matador. These weapons systems became integral components of the U.S. nuclear deterrent, further entrenching the German scientists' value to the American military-industrial complex. However, the integration of these scientists was not without friction. Many American citizens and scientists were outraged by the presence of former Nazis in their midst. Albert Einstein publicly criticized the program, and organizations like the Federation of American Scientists protested the ethical implications of granting citizenship to men who had served Hitler. Within the government, there were also dissenting voices, but they were largely silenced by the prevailing fear of Soviet technological dominance. The legacy of Operation Paperclip is also complicated by the Soviet Union's parallel program, Operation WWII. The Soviets forcibly relocated thousands of German specialists to the USSR, using them to jumpstart their own rocket and aviation programs. This context is essential for understanding the American rationale. Policymakers believed they were in a zero-sum game where failing to secure German intellect meant ceding it to an existential enemy. This brain race was a defining feature of the early Cold War. As the decades passed, the truth about the backgrounds of many paperclip scientists began to surface. Investigative journalists and historians uncovered the sanitized dossiers, revealing the extent of the government's cover-up. In the 1980s, the U.S. Department of Justice's Office of Special Investigations reopened cases against several paperclip recruits. Arthur Rudolph, the project director for the Saturn V, renounced his U.S. citizenship and returned to Germany rather than face a denaturalization hearing over his role in managing slave labor at Mittelbau-Dora. The revelation of these details forced a re-evaluation of the heroes of the space age. While Wernher von Braun and his colleagues were celebrated for their engineering prowess, their moral legacy remains stained by their complicity in the Holocaust. Operation Paperclip demonstrated that scientific progress is not inherently virtuous. It can be achieved by individuals who have committed great evil. The program serves as a stark reminder that talent and morality are not linked, and that innovation often comes at a hidden price. Ultimately, Operation Paperclip stands as a testament to the moral ambiguity of geopolitics. It was a program born of fear and necessity, driven by the belief that the end, security against the Soviet Union, justified the means. The United States gained immense technological power, landing men on the moon and building a formidable military arsenal. Yet by sheltering perpetrators of crimes against humanity, the nation compromised its own ideals of justice. In the end, Operation Paperclip is a chapter of American history that resists simple categorization. It was a dazzling intelligence success that secured vital technology and reshaped the modern world. Simultaneously, it was a profound ethical failure that allowed war criminals to escape justice and live out their days as respected citizens. As we continue to grapple with the relationship between science, ethics, and national security, the story of these 1,600 German scientists serves as a cautionary tale about the costs of expediency.